been a little bit concerned with some of the stories surrounding Lucas Paqueta. If you're not aware of them, they pertain to him not so much leaving, but the reasons for him wanting to leave. The rumours are that he doesn't like the style of football under David Moyes. Now, we'll get to that in just a second because it's come from more than one source. And also, those rumours are coming from more than one person. There's more than one person saying it. But I want to be fair to David Moyes. I don't want to use this as a stick just to beat him with. I think it needs to be appraised and it needs to be looked at with an open mind. And when I say an open mind, I think it's so easy to be closed-minded with David Moyes, where you have in your mind an outcome that you would prefer. You've in your mind decided that you don't like him, that you have decided that you want him to go. So you get a confirmation bias and you harvest any information that is critical of him. So if anyone criticises David Moyes, that's worth a lot to you because it reinforces your entrenched opinion. If someone praises David Moyes, you discount it because that doesn't suit your way of thinking. I've tried to remain open-minded to such an extent that after we did after we won the whatever they've now called it, but as it was at the time, the UEFA Europa Conference League, when West Ham won that, I did a video afterwards, very happy for obvious reasons, not going to apologise for that, and said I thought he deserved a chance to see out his contract. And there were a lot of people in the comments who accused me of flip-flopping, that was it, flip-flopping, changing my mind and all the rest of it. And you know what? For me to take that as a criticism, we'd both have to agree that there is a currency in not changing your mind. I think you should remain open-minded. I think that I've got a lot of things wrong in my time. I have changed my mind on many things, changed the course of direction. Now, overly, have I changed my opinion on David Moyes' style of football? No. I still think David Moyes' style of football is pretty boring stuff. It can be really overly negative. Did I change my opinion on whether it worked? Well, I think he sort of proved that it worked, really, didn't he? So I don't think it's cut and dried. I don't think it's black and white. It is a confusing thing to think your way through. And just because you like or dislike something doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right or the wrong thing. However, Lucas Paqueta coming out has added to the, I don't want to quite say avalanche, but let's just say body of criticism that there is towards David Moyes. So who's saying it and why are they saying it? Well, I think they're saying it because they believe it to be true. But it's not just Lucas Paqueta. I think if it was just that as an isolated incident, you could say, look, there's no problem. It's just one disgruntled player. And I don't think he's overly disgruntled. I think Lucas Paqueta's probably quite happy at West Ham. However, he's changed his agent, which usually indicates one thing, and that's that you're angling for a move. But he's unhappy with the style of football. And for Lucas Paqueta, I would get that. I would understand that. He is a playmaker. He's a skillful player. He would flourish more in a team that play like Brighton, for instance. However, it's not just him, is it? So I think when you start to add in the other evidence, then you start to appreciate that Moyes' style of football not only might be a problem, but it might be something that that may be a bit of a hindrance to us moving forward. And that's why I don't want to just beat David Moyes with a stick. I want to look at it, and let's look at it as honestly as we can. So let's go back to the Mark Warburton interview, one of which we were very lucky to feature on Hammers Chat. And he was a great guy. He came across really, really well, didn't he? There was another one on Talk Sport. I think he's done another interview in the written press as well, quite possibly. Might have that wrong, but I think so. In it, he was being very respectful, very keen to talk about his friendship with David Moyes. And he was at pains to suggest that his style of football is more possession-based. I don't think he'd ever say anything so crass to say that his football is more attractive than David Moyes' because he doesn't want to insult him. It's his friend. That's some key information, right? He's not going to say anything nasty about his friend. They've holidayed together, they play golf together, that sort of thing. You know, they're mates. However, their philosophies are not aligned. David Moyes plays defensive football and Mark Warburton plays more attacking. Even if you just took that as a story, that is some evidence. Okay, it's you might say it's anecdotal evidence, but it's coming from a friend, it's coming from a good place, and it was certainly strong enough as part of it when Mark Warburton felt he could no longer remain at West Ham. So that's a little bit of evidence. So that goes to support what what Lucas Paqueta might be saying, or might be, leaking out there, or might be thinking. Then you sort of go back to what Vladimir Soufal said during the season, which was actually he prefers it when we go behind early in games because the manager throws off the shackles and allows them to attack. We no longer have anything to protect once we're behind in a game. And again, okay, it might just be anecdotal evidence. It might be, a little bit flimsy, but it's still there. It's a story. It's not a news. It's not a journalist suggesting it. So you've already got a couple of West Ham players and a West Ham coach who are saying it. And even though it's just anecdotal, there is evidence to back it up. You can see that we tend to attack more once we go behind in games. You can see that. That's clear. And once it starts to build up, you think, okay, yeah, there may well be something to this. Mikel Antonio. And Mikel Antonio said the stuff that he did about Gianluca Scamacca. Antonio said, as a striker at West Ham, you feed off scraps. Now, it doesn't take much of a translation to extrapolate from that we don't attack very much. That's why you're feeding off scraps. If we were attacking all the time, the striker would have a feast, right? He's not saying feast, he's saying scraps. Got to really work hard to get any chances because we're defending, you're isolated, you're up on your own. We play with one striker. All of this stuff points to the fact that we are a defensive team. And there are also other rumours, and I don't want to say this yet, but I'm sure a lot of you would have heard them, is that there is a relatively high-profile player at West Ham at the moment who we'd quite like to sign a contract, who's not signed a contract yet, who, again, has made noises about our style of football. And it's certainly delaying him signing the contract, if you can believe that or not believe that, even if you discount that. The other evidence is there, and then you've got the evidence of your own eyes. Do we play attacking football? No, we don't. That doesn't mean to say, and I want to be as fair as I can, I don't sometimes enjoy the football. There have been games I've really, really enjoyed. There's been some games where we've thumped the opposition. But then some games we sit back and we defend and we counter-attack, like the final against Fiorentina, and we win. We've had Europe 3 seasons in a row, and we've won a trophy. David Moyes' tactics, they clearly work. They're clearly effective in some way, shape or form. There's no doubt about that. And I think you go back to the confirmation bias. There's always been excuses for what David Moyes has done. And I think, the first one was COVID and it was in lockdown. And then there was another series where we were just lucky because that particular season when we finished 7th, we didn't play that well, but the other teams in the league were crap. So there's a second excuse for us qualifying for Europe. The one I hear, I don't hear quite a lot, I have heard that is we only won the Conference League and as a byproduct qualified for the Europa League next season because we had Declan Rice. He basically pulled us through and stuff like that. So there's almost for every time David Moyes does well, there's a reason for it. It's not David Moyes' coaching, but every time West Ham do badly, it's David Moyes' coaching. And you understand, I don't like that way of doing things. I think probably, as always, the truth is somewhere in the middle. However, what I do think is when you get an insurmountable amount of evidence, then you start to get a little bit concerned about it. And I do wonder if David Moyes' style of football is a hindrance to us now moving forward. And again, you've got to look for the nuance on it. This is not binary. You've got to look for the nuance on it. Does that mean that I'm ungrateful for David Moyes? No. Not at all. But if we're at a point where strikers are getting frustrated, where Gianluca Scamacca, who is a good striker, can't play within our system, whereby our Brazilian superstar, who made a hell of a difference to us towards the end of the season, doesn't feel that he can play within the system, where a coach feels that he has to leave because we were just too cautious, you start thinking, well, okay, that's impacting. And all I'm speaking about there are people that are at the club. Those are people at the club. They're all at the club. Warburton, Scamacca, Antonio, Paqueta, Soufal. What about the people who might be looking to come into the club? Because I think that's a tough one. So even if we were going to go and get a really, really good attacking player, he's going to perhaps look at the way we play, look at David Moyes and think, I'm not sure I want to be involved in this. I think somebody with as much reputation, as big a reputation as Lucas Paqueta, suggesting that he doesn't like the football, so he wants to leave. I don't think that's great, because that gets heard by other players as well. Now, I'm not sitting here with a solution saying, do I think that we should sack David Moyes now or anything like that. I think it's foolish to say that would happen, because it just won't happen. But I am starting to get concerned that it might hinder us, and what it means is any players coming in are really going to have to buy in, not to the philosophy of the manager, but it's a philosophy of the director of football. And if we just suppose for a second, and this is guesswork, that the philosophy of the director of football and the philosophy of David Moyes are both different, then anybody being signed this season is going to have to wonder about where that leaves them next season, because if what we want to do is sign a very defensive player who might thrive in a David Moyes system, David Moyes leaves in a year, which I'm sure most of us expect him to, and a new manager comes in, let's say Tim Steiden appoints Xabi Alonso, then maybe, just maybe, that ultra-defensive player that's thrived under David Moyes won't thrive under Xabi Alonso. So you're asking that player to join a club when only really 1 year is going to suit his style of play. I find it all a little bit mixed. It's not confusing. It's quite plain and quite clear what's happening. But I feel the messaging might be confusing. I feel it might be confusing for the players. There's certainly rumours going around that Tim Steiden, when he comes in, is not only going to oversee the signing of players, but actually the signing of coaches as well, and implement a playing philosophy. The phrase I heard was the West Ham way 2.0, and I've heard 2 people have said that as well. I don't know whether it's true, but 2 separate people who don't even know each other have said that to me. So if that's the case, that does sound like the implementation of a club-wide philosophy. That does sound like an infrastructure, a reshaping. So where does that leave little old David Moyes in that? With his... Actually, I was going to say antiquated. But do you know what? Again, that's an insult. And I've got to sort of check myself when I do it. You know, I don't know how... I can't call his ways antiquated, because they've just been victorious in many respects. The last person to win a trophy... Actually, no, it wasn't. It was Pep Guardiola. But before that, the second to last person to win a trophy, the second most recent trophy was David Moyes. They can't be antiquated. His methods have won something in the modern age. But let's say, where does his defensive strategy fit amongst this new world order at West Ham? This new West Ham way 2.0. I don't know. But I am slightly concerned with us having, going into a transfer window with the Declan Rice money to spend, that an awful lot, is resting on it. And I don't have the answers. I'm just saying. And I know there'll be comments in this from people who've just seen the title of the video and haven't listened, to what it is for it. But I'd be very interested to know, for those of you that had listened, what do you think? Where do you think we are going with this? And I don't mean that Moyes out and that. So what are we thinking? I find it really difficult to work out what's going to go on here. And I find it really difficult to reconcile in my mind whoever's making decisions. Let's say it's Sullivan. How he's almost got these 2 different philosophies at play, or he's going to have on come the 1st of July, at West Ham at the same time. How's that? I think the question is, how the hell is that going to work?